Conservatives are losing voters to Nigel Farage over the migration crisis. That's according to new polling, with Reform UK now consistently in double digits.
Yeah, a majority of Tory voters now saying reducing levels of illegal and legal migration, which are both at the pretty much the highest levels in British history, is more important than growing the economy.
So what are the prospects for the Conservatives, and how will they fight Starmer to help their left and Reform to their right? I'm not sure what that means. I think we'll get the details from Dan Falvey, who's head of digital for us. But essentially it means that the Conservatives are under threat from the left and the right.
Absolutely. What we're seeing is Rishi Sunak is being pulled both ways. We're seeing that the Labour Party is high in the polls, and we've seen that now for a number of months. But very recently we've started seeing Reform UK, which is more to the right of the Conservatives, are now creeping up. And that's a real problem for the Conservatives, because they are trying to keep voters happy on one side and on the other. And what's really interesting about that polling that shows about migration now being such an issue for voters is when Rishi Sunak set out his 5 pledges earlier this year, stopping the boats was one. But it's not just about illegal migration. We're seeing that legal migration is also an issue for voters, and that wasn't even a priority that the Prime Minister set out, and he's going to have to really now take action to really bring that down.
And there's no one to blame but himself for that. The government issues the visas.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's the problem.
Absolutely. The problem is, though, when you end up with this kind of point where you look at the economy needs some migration because we've lost workers after leaving the EU in areas where we can't immediately replace them. So, for example, doctors or nurses, it takes time to train up, and the government says it has this longer-term plan and strategy in order to do that, which means we won't be reliant on those workers from overseas. But you can't do that instantly, and the government is trying to grapple with how does it do the rhetoric and the reality of that.
And I suppose the polling will be worrying for a lot of Conservative MPs who are in comfortable, safe seats. They'll be looking at their 25,000 majority that they've had over the years and realise that actually Reform could take away votes from them and actually give these traditional Tory heartlands, hand them to Labour, essentially, because of our political system. It's unlikely that Reform would be able to take those constituencies.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I don't think we're going to suddenly see, we're seeing Reform kind of between 10 to 13% of the polls. I don't think we should therefore see that to be them getting 10 to 13% of the seats. They'll be lucky to even get one, to be honest with you. What it does potentially do is split the vote and allow Labour to come through into other areas. The Reform Party, it used to be called the Brexit Party. It did stand in some of the 2019 elections, but it pulled out of a number of seats after the Conservatives warned then that their fears were it was going to split the vote between the Brexit Party and the Tories and let Labour in the Red Wall. And now that Brexit is done and Reform is planning to stand, that kind of deal that was done, if you like, is gone, and that could be a real issue.
Where are we in terms of, this idea, and it's slightly worrying because it means people are getting sort of very single issue on it, but, this 2/3 of whatever it was, a majority of Tory voters say reducing migration is more important than growing the economy. We know Labour today are pushing growing the economy as their big sort of agenda setter for the day. Because people might be concerned, but actually growing the economy is absolutely vital to the future of this nation.
Yeah, I think the thing is that as Conservatives, you need to do both. The problem is they currently don't appear to be succeeding on either front. We've seen inflation drop. We've seen the government saying that they're reducing some taxes, but in reality, the tax burden's about to hit the highest it's ever been at. And I think when you look at that and then you place it with migration, that's where the government have got a real issue. They're struggling to be able to claim success on either of them. They keep announcing plans for migration, which they hope will allow them to kind of voters to see that they're taking action and doing something. But the problem is we've had plan after plan after plan, and we're yet to really see any kind of real impact.
And they're on a real sticky wicket with Rwanda, aren't they? Because even if they can get this treaty, this treaty is done, and in such a way, and if there's an emergency vote and all the rest of it, that would allow them to bypass the Supreme Court and actually enact the Rwanda plan. The problem is then it has to become a silver bullet. It has to solve the issue, which is very unlikely.
Well, but here's the thing. So Lucy Fraser, when you were talking to her, said that, it's not a political gimmick. But even if we announce emergency legislation this week, as is being expected, it's probably going to be the end of February before it goes through the House of Parliament. That means that it's probably going to be March or April before we start seeing any planes to Rwanda if it all went through fine.
And could they even get it through the Lords?
Well, that's to be seen. But if they did, we're still going to see it's going to be March or April before anything happens. If there was a May general election, which there has been talk about, it would mean that basically Rishi Sunak could claim that he's got this plan in place before it's really been tested and we really know whether it works. So we might allow him to claim a victory without us actually being able to see the results.
You're not suggesting it's a political gimmick then, are you?
Certainly not.
All right, Dan, thank you very much indeed. Appreciate it.